Jonathan's on fire today. Man. We're sure our youth group still doesn't know how to clap, but Jonathan was on fire. Absolutely. Could we do like a class for them where they learn how to clap? They're not even listening. That's fine. They're really bad at it. Anyways, it's a joyful sound unto the Lord, right? So hey, we are continuing our series called Vibe Check. We're looking at the different vibes that we carry around and trying to, have some self-awareness and do some self-evaluation of what that looks like. And we're kind of looking at a lot of the negative ones and the ways we can change them. So I want to start. Well, before I start, I want to say hi to our online tribe. I forgot. I was thinking about you earlier. That's weird. I don't even know who's watching. Is there like 3 of you out there somewhere? Yeah. We do love you guys, and we pray for you a lot, and we hope God works in your life through the internet in a good way. All right, so we're going to start this morning by talking about grocery stores. This is really important, okay? I have learned something about myself. I struggle to love people in grocery stores. It's a specific spot in my life that I don't know why. It is very hard for me in a grocery store to love people. And I reflected on it this week. I came to the realization, I don't know if you know this, that you can commit 6 of the 7 deadly sins with a grocery cart. Did you know that? Think about this with me for a minute. Number 1, kind of obvious, gluttony, right? So, well, it's not really gluttony. It's like preparation to commit gluttony, right? You're getting ready for it. It's premeditated gluttony. Then start to go down the line. Like if you're one of those people who leave your cart just wherever you want in the parking lot instead of putting it in the corral, sloth, right? That's sloth. If you park your cart sideways in an aisle and look at something for 5 minutes and ignore that the rest of us exist, I will be tempted to T-bone your cart with my cart, wrath. That's the one. That's my main one that I experience. If you're standing by somebody and they have stuff in their cart and you're looking at the stuff in their cart and you're kind of judging it, right? Like skim milk's not even real milk. What are you doing? Pride, right? If you look at somebody else's cart and you want what they have in their cart, envy. And then if you buy in bulk something that there is a shortage of, hypothetically, like toilet paper or something like that, greed, right? The only one I can't figure out and don't want to figure out is lust. So we're going to leave that one alone. And I just want to say, please, somebody's going to be creative. I don't want to know. Please don't email me later and be like, I figured it out. I don't want to know that one. But I really do struggle to love people in the grocery store. I don't know why. It's a specific one for me. I actually think that someday, this is going to be my first book is going to be grocery store etiquette. It's going to be like 7 pages. I'll just do this. It'll just be 7 pages long. We'll leave off lust, but we'll just go through it because I have some strong opinions about how you should act in a grocery store. But I do struggle in that way. So the vibe we're going to look at today, I'll just call it a critical vibe. And it's specifically critical of other human beings. So if you remember week 1, we talked about complaining and we focused on just kind of the general idea of complaining. But this one, I really want to zero in on our attitude, how we see, how we think about people specifically, people. So here is a definition of a critical attitude towards others. Guys, I was really proud of the 7 deadly sins in a grocery store when I came up with it. I was stupidly excited. You should have been there. It was great. I started going down. I'm like, it's 3. No, it's 4. Wait, it's 6. And then I stopped at lust. So it was awesome. Here's the definition. Dwelling upon the perceived faults of another with no view to their good. So there's three parts to that, right? Dwelling upon the perceived faults of another with no view to their good. Dwelling upon. You don't just like notice a fault, you dwell upon it. And it can get to the point that when you see that person or think about that person, the only thing you see, the only thing you think about is the fault, right? You come to the point where you're marinating on that. You're turning it over and over in your mind. You cut a groove in your mind to the point where when you think about that person, that's all you see, the fault. Dwelling upon. And then it's the perceived faults, right? It's not necessarily a real thing. We have to acknowledge that sometimes we get things wrong. Our perception is not always reality with other people. We don't see their motives. We don't see their past. We don't see the burdens that they're carrying. We don't know. It's a perceived fault. And then with no view to their good. You're not looking at their fault. You're not praying for them. You're not hoping for good for them. You're just focused on the fault with no good in mind. That is a critical attitude towards others. So what I want to do, I want to look at a story in the Old Testament, a little micro story in the Old Testament. We're going to shoot through it, and then I'll make some observations about the story. It's in Numbers chapter 12. It's a story about Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. So if you don't know who that is, Moses was the leader of Israel, arguably one of the greatest leaders ever. Aaron and Miriam are actually his brother and sister, but they're also in leadership in Israel. So this is kind of your top tier leadership in Israel. That's who this story is about. Starting in verse 1, here's what happens. While they were at Hazeroth, Miriam and Aaron started criticizing Moses because he had married a Cushite woman. They said, has the Lord only spoken through Moses? Hasn't he spoken through us too? But the Lord heard them. So Moses is the leader, Aaron and Miriam are also up there with him. And look how it starts. They criticize him because of his wife. So they went after his wife first. I don't know what it is that they didn't like about her. I could make some guesses, but who knows? They didn't like her hair. I don't know. But they start there. And then look at the jump that they make. They go from, they don't like something about his wife, and now the Lord only spoken through. Aren't we leaders too? So they start complaining about his leadership. They go from wife to leadership, and they start with this critical, negative attitude. And then the verse ends very ominously, but the Lord heard them. Verse 4. I'm going to skip verse 3 because, so just so you know, verse 3 is an editorial kind of comment. It says that Moses was the most humble man to ever live, which is weird because many scholars believe that Moses wrote Numbers, which is weird for Moses to claim that Moses is the most humble man. Most scholars believe whoever was, kind of copying that through, added that in as a parenthetical kind of comment, kind of just pointing out that he's going to take this criticism well, I guess, but Moses did not call himself the most humble man ever. That would be weird. Verse 4. So immediately the Lord called Moses, Aaron, and Miriam and said, go to the tabernacle, all three of you. So the three of them went to the tabernacle. The Lord descended in a pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tabernacle. Aaron and Miriam, he called, and they stepped forward. Does this not have some strong, your kids are about to get in trouble vibes going on right now, right? I am coming down the steps, and you better be waiting for me when I get down there. You are in trouble. And I don't know about you, but man, that would be utterly terrifying, right? This is crazy. And think about what caused this. Why God is marching down the steps right now, about to flex on them. It's because they were critical and negative of Moses, right? So God's heated. Verse 6. And the Lord said to them, now listen to what I say. If there were prophets among you, I, the Lord, would reveal myself in visions. I would speak to them in dreams, but not with my servant Moses. Of all my house, he is the one I trust. I speak to him face to face clearly and not in riddles. He sees the Lord as he is. So why were you not afraid to criticize my servant Moses? So God just rips him a new one for this critical, negative attitude toward Moses. And again, it ends kind of ominously with, why weren't you afraid to talk that way about him? And then verse 9, the Lord was very angry with them, if you couldn't tell, and he departed. As the cloud moved from above the tabernacle, there stood Miriam, her skin as white as snow from leprosy. When Aaron saw what had happened to her, he cried out to Moses, "Oh, my master, please don't punish us for this sin we have so foolishly committed." So when God goes back up, Miriam is standing there and she now has leprosy. Now, immediately the question probably pops into your mind, why not Aaron? why just Miriam? And I just want to say, I don't know. Some people use this as like, oh, God must be sexist. No, I don't think. I think he created both. I think he's cool with both sexes. I don't know why. We don't, and Bible stories don't contain all the details. Maybe there was something about the way Miriam did it or the extent that she went to. But notice Aaron owned it. Did you hear the way he said, don't punish us? So he didn't really like, oh, thank God. It was, it was like I'm over here. He owned it too. And then I love the way he ended his little plea to Moses. This sin we have so foolishly committed. Sin we have so foolishly committed. Again, and what that sin is, the thing that caused this whole thing is a critical negative attitude towards another person. That's what it was. And just so you know, Moses prays for her, and she doesn't end up with leprosy for the rest of her life. God does heal her. And Moses is the one that prays for her, which is kind of cool since they were aiming their negativity and their critical spirit at him. So I want to make a couple of observations about this story. Number one, first and foremost, God hates our critical, negative attitude towards people. God hates it. I guess what I'm trying to point out, it's not like he's like kind of neutral, like a little bit negative. Like he hates it, right? He marched down from heaven and confronted them on this. I don't know, like if you're with me here, I'm kind of like, okay, they kind of were complaining a little bit about Moses. It didn't seem like that big of a deal, but God like dropped whatever he was doing and came right down the moment that happened. It's a big deal. Your attitude towards other people is a big deal to God. That's the first thing. Second thing, if you're looking for faults, you'll find them. If you're looking for faults, you'll find them. Again, you look at Moses, he's one of the greatest leaders to ever live. And when Miriam and Aaron kind of started in and they started looking for something, they found it. They found something to be frustrated about. They found some imperfection, and that's true. Anybody in your life, if you look close enough, you're going to find some things wrong. You are. Because every single person is sinful and fallen. You're not going to find a person that if you look real close, oh my gosh, they're actually perfect. No, everybody, if you look for faults, you're going to find them. Number three, related to that, the more you focus on the negative, the more negative you will see. So it's not just that if you start looking for it, you're going to find it. Once you find it, you'll find more. And it'll be a domino effect. Because, again, look at the progression of the criticism. First, it was, we don't like your wife for whatever reason. And then it tumbled down the hill to, we got some problems with your leadership. Like, those two things don't really have anything to do with each other, right? That is not a related thing. And one is maybe a little mild, like it's going to make Thanksgiving a little bit awkward. But this one over here, this is huge. And they go from one to the other because if you don't check your negativity, if you don't check that critical attitude, the dominoes will fall and you'll turn it into a thing. You will taint your vision. I mean, think about, they talk about people having rose-colored glasses on. What is this? Brown-colored glasses? Okay, good. You know what I mean. There's this old story of like a farmer who sits by a road going into a town and somebody stops and says, what are the people like in this town? And the guy goes, well, what were they like in your last town? He's like, oh, they were awful. They were angry, rude, just really unpleasant to be around. And he goes, well, you'll find the same in this town. So the guy marches by. And then another person comes by and asks the farmer the same question. Hey, what are they like in this town? He goes, well, what were they like in your last town? And the guy goes, oh man, they were pleasant, kind, and always willing to help their neighbor. He goes, hey, you'll find the same in this town. Same town. But the wise farmer was acknowledging that what you're going to experience is painted by what you expect and really who you are. And that's huge. Again, if you start looking for negative, you're going to find it and you're going to find more and more of it. You have tainted your view of the world. And then number four, my fourth observation, critical negative people attract critical negative people. Miriam started with the critical, negative stuff, and then Aaron was drawn to it. It seems that a critical, negative spirit is magnetic to other critical negative spirits. They seem to kind of draw to each other. And if you've ever been in leadership, you know this happens, right? If you've ever been in leadership, if you're a boss of any kind, any kind of like that, have you ever had somebody come up to you and they do the thing that happens in church all the time? I don't know if you know this. So occasionally people complain about our church. Not very often. It's usually about the fog and we don't care. So you know what? Of all the things to complain about in a church, if it's just the fog, I'm okay with that. We're working on it. Anyways. Sometimes people will come to me, and you know what they always say? The way the complaint or the criticism comes, it's people are saying. It's people. Never their names. It's like a CIA document that's been redacted. You don't know who, but it's this mysterious people that are complaining. And I always listen here, and maybe this is wrong. Maybe I'm just arrogant. I don't know. I am arrogant. Maybe it's being applied here. I don't know. But I always kind of push away from that because I know that it's true that a critical negative spirit attracts critical negative spirits. So usually the perception is that everybody thinks this way, but it's not. It's just the people who you're around because you've allowed this little critical negative cloud to build up, and it's just the people inside there. Actually, a lot of people don't even think that way at all. I mean, think about it. If you were a fly and you were on a trash heap, you might assume that the only other insects there are flies because that's the only ones that are around. But if you fly outside the trash heap, you'd find plenty of other ones. And I think that's the way a critical negative spirit can be. You get so absorbed in it, and again, there's a magnetism to it that you think this is the way everybody is. And it's not. It's not. And then this leads to the worst thing, I think, the fifth thing, which is critical negative people lack an awareness of their critical negative attitude. Usually, a critical negative person doesn't know it because they don't think it's critical and negative. They think it's normal because that's all they're around. Or you would call it a realist. That's a good way to get out of it. But look at, again, the way Aaron ended what he said. Forgive us this sin we have so foolishly committed. It was like his eyes were open to it. Like he didn't realize that he had got sucked into it. And when God came down and pushed him back, he's like, oh, wow, I don't want that. I don't want to be that. I don't want to have that kind of an attitude towards people. So, this is the part where I'm hoping you're thinking, yeah, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be a critical negative person. I don't want to have this kind of attitude. Maybe you're also mildly aware that you got a little bit of this going on in your life. What's the answer then? What's the answer? I'm going to read a famous thing that Jesus said. He's asked a question and he answers. It's in Matthew 22. 36 is the question. It says this, Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses? So that's a question about like the Old Testament, the entire Old Testament. This guy is asking, what's the most important commandment in the whole thing? So here's what Jesus replies, verse 37. If you grew up in church, you know what he says. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. So Jesus answers with, you could say obviously, right? Like love God with all you got. Love God. That's the answer to the question, right? But Jesus isn't done. He keeps going in verse 39. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and the demands of the prophets are based on these two commands. Now, again, I would say like Jesus' first answer wasn't all that groundbreaking, but I love that Jesus like adds to, the guy only asked what the first, like the greatest commandment was, but Jesus like, let me tell you about the second one too. Because evidently they're attached. Evidently there's something about first and second that they interact, right? So he says, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And then he makes the crazy statement that everything that's written in the Old Testament hangs on these. If you get these two right, love God and love people, you've gone a long way. You've gone a long way. If you could just do that. Simple. Love God, love people. Really difficult to do in practice, right? And let's be honest. So I grew up in church. I've been in church, literally, like my whole life. I even went to a Christian elementary school. I cannot begin to count how many times I have heard that I am supposed to love my neighbor. I've heard it over and over and over again. But do you ever get to the point where you hear something like that and you just, I don't know how else to describe it, but it almost feels like it loses its meaning. You know, oh yeah, love, yeah, we're supposed to love people. What else though? Like you almost kind of you just kind of nod your head at it and want to move on from it, and you don't actually let it impact. You know, nobody's crying right now like, yes, I need to love my neighbor. You're not deeply impacted by this truth. You've heard it before 1,000,000 times, and it kind of pings off of us. The second greatest commandment, the first one is love God, and the second one is love people. That's a huge deal. And Jesus said, if you just do that, you kind of got it. Like your whole Christian life, you could just do that. Forget the details. You do that, you're good. And we're just kind of like, okay, that's not very deep, Pastor, right? Why don't you go teach the kids? Yeah, they need it too, believe me. So I guess what I want to do, I want to dig into this word a little bit. I want to not necessarily define it more, but kind of dig into it, look at some of what it means to love, and then maybe some motivations to love. I got 5 things. I didn't just realize that. I did 5 observations, now 5 things. This is like Sesame Street. Sermon is brought to you by the number 5. Sometimes I just say what's in my head. I just decided, I don't know, maybe if you've been at this church for a while, that like I didn't always used to do that, but I decided, I don't know, maybe a year ago that I was just going to start just talking and hope. I've gotten in trouble a couple times, but mostly I've been okay. It's usually my wife that's upset with me, so it's all right. Number 5. So we're going to round out what it means to love your neighbor. Here's the first thing. Strive to believe the best. Strive to believe the best about the people in your life. One of the things it means to love someone has to do with our assumptions about their motives. Think about this with me for a minute. Like, you know what people do because you can see it, but you never know why they do it, right? You never know it. You always, as a human being, you're always interpreting what people do, and you're making assumptions about why they do it. Always, right? There's never a time where the motives are like, wouldn't it be cool if you could just like see it, if there's like a little sign, this is why they're doing that? Like, that would be awesome, but never is that the case. You're always filling in the blanks, always. And you can choose one of 2 ways, right? I mean, I joke first service, if your husband brings you flowers, either A, he loves you, that's why, or B, he totally cheated on you, right? Like, you can go one of 2 ways. And then a joke that, or you dreamed that he cheated on you, which is what my wife does to me. And then she's mad at me for like a whole day, even though I wasn't there. I didn't do it. But think about that. Isn't that a kind of a crazy realization? You're always deciding why people do things. You always do it, always. So what love does is it assumes the best. It assumes the best about someone. You're striving to believe the best about the why. So remember 1 Corinthians 13, the love verses. Many of you had it read at your weddings, right? Loves patient, loves kind, loves all those things. Right at the end, the kind of the crescendo of those verses, it says, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, love never fails. Remember that? So that little believes all things, that one always trips me up. If you ever just read your Bible and go, that's weird, right? Like, I don't know, you're allowed to say that, by the way. Like, I think people think that they have to like read their Bibles all holy, but like you can like pray and go, God, that doesn't make any sense. Like, what does believe all things mean? We have to dig a little bit deeper into that because I don't know, I don't want to believe everything. But what it actually means, it's a statement about what you believe about somebody's motives, about their why. It's actually a way of saying believe the best. When someone does something that couldn't be interpreted one of 2 ways, you're supposed to go with the good one. That's what love does. Now, let me acknowledge something because I know there's enough people in here who are exactly like me who struggle with this because my brain starts like little alarm bells start going off when you say believe the best about people. Have you met people? Right? Like, I know people. I don't want to believe the best about us. Some people, I'd be an idiot to believe the best about them, right? So if you have like a manipulative or an abusive relationship in your past, this is going to be a really hard thing for you because you're going to default the opposite way, right? You're going to default to, no, their motives are bad. Even if they're doing good things, they're going to try and hurt me somehow. They're doing it they have some selfish angle. You're always going to go there. And I understand. I understand. And I will say, I think you do need to be careful, especially with somebody who has those kind of tendencies. But let's also acknowledge something. That is a percentage of your life, right? The exceptions, so to speak, of something like this would be a percentage of your life. Let's just say 10% of the time, you got to be real careful with assuming the best about someone. But the rest of your human interactions, 90% of your human interactions, this is important, right? So how about we don't focus on that? And I know for some of you, it's like, I can't not focus on that. But set that, put it in a place, and then with the rest of your human interactions, this is it, man. Strive to believe the best. Because listen, think about how much this matters to your human interactions. Your assumptions about other people's motives paint everything, all of the stuff. So you really have to strive to believe the best. You're constantly filling in the blanks. Fill them in with good things. That's the first thing. Strive to believe the best. That's loving. Second, drop the little stuff. Drop the little stuff. Loving someone means not turning molehills into mountains, not overreacting, not turning a level 2 offense into a level 10 offense. Drop the little stuff. Loving our neighbor means some stuff we just let love absorb it. We chalk it up to the account of love, and we don't even have to deal with it at all. 1 Peter 4:8 says, most important of all, continue to show deep love for each other, for love covers a multitude of sins. And I think, see, this one's important, especially in church. Can we just talk about church for a minute? This one's so important in church because I think sometimes people get so caught up in little things because relationships are hard. This is a diverse group of people. Just sitting in this service is a hugely diverse group of people. For the most part, we got one thing in common, right? Like that's Jesus, that's it. I mean, there is a wide diversity here. So you put a bunch of people together who are all different, you're gonna have things that cause friction. And that's why this is so important to say, like, let's not make a small thing into a big thing. Let's not do that. Matter of fact, some stuff is so small that it just doesn't, because we love each other, we can just forget it, make it disappear. You don't have to think about it. You don't even need an apology for it. You can just go, no big deal, right? I mean, for me, it's like that lady who parked her cart sideways in an aisle, who I do imagine horribly, sinfully T-boning her cart or picking it up and turning it on its side because I feel like I could do that and then she'd never get it back up. This is the things I think about. Or I could just be like, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't matter. I don't need to confront her on it. I don't need her to apologize. I don't need anything. Love's going to cover that one. Like, what if we just had a certain level of things that happened to us that we just it was free? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just free. I'm not going to make anybody pay a price for this level to me. I'm going to charge it to Jesus' account, and I'm good. And I don't mean, listen, I know there's somebody hearing this. Some of y'all, I know some relationships where you ignore, and then you explode. I don't mean that either. Sometimes in a long-term relationship, it's not a little thing, it's a pattern. I know. Go to marriage counseling, not here right now. But some stuff just isn't a big deal, and you just need to let it go, and nothing else needs to happen with it. Drop the small stuff. Third thing, if you want to love your neighbor, don't label them. Don't label them. When you put a label on someone, do you realize how easy it makes it to not love them? When you put a label on them, the moment you slap that label on, it obscures your view of the actual person at that point. All you see is the label, and you focus on all the things that you think that label means. You cease to see the human behind the label. It dehumanizes. And I don't know if you've done any study of history at all, but one of the worst things that happens, the worst things in human history that have happened when we dehumanize a group of people. When we decide these people actually aren't human or aren't as human as we are, that's when the worst things happen. And we do it on a micro level all the time. They're just an addict. Or they're just a other political party that I'm not. Whatever. The moment you put the label on, you can't love the label. You can't love the label. You love the person. There's a human behind that label. How many times have you in your life, be honest as you want, maybe it's never, but for me it's happened a couple times, where there's a group of people that you've made some assumptions about, you've put a label on them, and then you met one in real life. And you had walking away from the interaction, you're going, you know what, they weren't that bad. Like, you got to stop in that moment and go, oh crap, right? That should be an oh crap moment. You should be going, that means all of my assumptions need to be questioned now because they were a real person. Right? That's a huge thing. We put a label on a group of people, we dehumanize them in our own minds, and it's really hard to love them. So man, be careful with your labels. I don't have a nice little verse for this one, but I can just tell you there's a consistent theme in the Bible when somebody tries to label someone or a group of people where it just never pans out, right? Oh, he's just a shepherd boy. Okay, Goliath. Good luck, bro. Like, he wasn't. The label obscured the person. Right? Oh, she's just a prostitute. Well, she's the reason your city walls are going to come down now. And she ended up in the line of Jesus. She wasn't just a prostitute. There was way more to her than that. Oh, they're just slaves. Okay, Egypt. Good luck with that when they walk out under the power of God. Or the worst one, oh, he's just the son of a carpenter. Yeah, king of the universe too, right? I mean, the label obscures our vision of the person. You miss the totality of what God made them to be, and you won't be able to love them like you should. So pull the labels off. And your brain does it on purpose because it's simpler that way. Fight against that. Fight against the ease of labeling someone and strive to see the person for the human that they are. Fourth thing that it means to love someone. Pray for them. Pray for them. And them. Pray for them. The them is the people you struggle to love. That's the them. Yeah, pray for your wife and your kids and all the people you like. But you need to have a part of your prayer list that's a them. The people that you don't like, the people that you struggle to love, pray for them too. By the way, so Jesus had some very clear things to say about this in Matthew 5, starting verse 43. He says this, you have heard the law that says love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. I mean, what a shift, right? Because the natural, easy thing to do, I love these people, I kind of hate these people, and you divide them out into categories. I'll pray for them, I'll ignore them. But Jesus says, hold up. Love your enemies. Take this group, put them here, and pray for them. And if you read it, Jesus, creator of the universe, King of everything, said, I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. That's a declarative statement, yes? In other words, something we call a biblical command, right? Jesus said to do this. That's huge. What that means is legit. I don't know how you pray. I don't know what if you have lists or whatever, but somewhere on your prayer list, whether it's in your head or written down somewhere or on your phone somewhere, there should be a little category that says enemies. And you should be praying for them because you are under orders to pray for them specifically. And you know why? I think something happens when you pray for somebody. And I don't mean praying for a bus to hit them, by the way, just to clarify. So you're like, yeah, get them, God. Like, keep in mind, remember the definition of the critical was with no view to their good. No, you're supposed to pray for their ultimate good. I'm not saying God's not going to have to do some work on them, but you let God worry about what the work is. You're praying for their ultimate good. Something happens in your heart when you pray for somebody like that. So, something shifts. It could be really hard and really, really rocky in your heart for that person, but if you start praying for their ultimate good, something shifts, and God uses that to soften your heart towards those people, for real. Pray for your enemies. Jesus wasn't done there. I got to show you the rest of what Jesus says in 46 and 47. He says, if you love only those who love you, what reward is there for that? even corrupt tax collectors do that much, if you are kind only to your friends, how are you different from anyone else? Even the pagans do that. This is really important. So, like, we can talk about the depth of our love, but this speaks to the width of our love, right? He said, love everybody. You don't get credit for loving people who love you back. Like, that's just normal, right? You just do that. That's kind of easy. It's not always easy, but for the most part, you love people who love you. But Jesus says, hold up. If you're a Christian, you're supposed to do, like, the thing that makes you unique is you don't just love people who love you back. You love everybody. There's no list anywhere that's like the exceptions to that rule. There is no group of people. There is no type of person. There is no personal list that you have that you're like, oh, I don't have to love them. No. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son. The whole thing, everybody. A mark of Christians is supposed to be that we love people who do not love us back. We're not doing great at that currently. And do you realize, like, the night Jesus was arrested, the night he was betrayed, the night he was, like, before he was killed, that he washed Judas's feet? You realize that? He didn't skip him. He washed Judas's feet. And then do you know what he said to him? When Judas came up in the Garden of Gethsemane to betray him with a kiss, he brought the soldiers with him to arrest Jesus. Do you know what Jesus called him? I can think of some things I would have wanted to call him in that moment. Jesus said, friend, do what you've come to do. Man, what a stubborn kind of love is that? If you've ever been betrayed, you can feel that one. He didn't say, you son of nothing. Friend, he still had a soft heart, even in that moment. We love everyone. Pray for your enemies. Pray for them. Last thing, if you want to love people well, you need to remember their value. Remember their value. Genesis 1:26-27 says this, then God said, let us make human beings in our image to be like us. They will reign with the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, the small animals that scurry along the ground. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. This verse says that when God created human beings, he did something different than all the rest of creation, that somehow, some way, we bear the image, the likeness of Creator God. And that means human beings, every single one of them is special in some way. And the best way I can kind of think to describe this is, you know how sometimes our country will go a little crazy and things will happen and then somebody will get a hold of American flag and they'll burn that thing? And that elicits an emotional response from people, right? They see that flag burning and they get hot, right? Now, follow me. The flag itself, the physical flag, is just cloth, right? Or nylon or whatever it's made of. It's just red, it's just white, it's just blue, it's just colors, it's just stripes, it's just stars. It's not, the physical thing itself is not important. Like, value, well, I don't know, $10.99. Like, it's just not that big of a deal. The reason people respond to it is what the flag represents, right? It's not, ooh, somebody burned a dish rag in their backyard. No, that's a flag. That has an image on it, and it represents something. It means something. And that's what God is saying here. When you talk about someone else bearing the image of God, they're not just flesh and bone. They represent something. Their value is bigger than just being a human being. They bear the image, the likeness of Creator God on them. That means they have huge worth. And that's why when Jesus, or when in the Old Testament, when God was talking about murder, he was explaining to people, hey, you're not supposed to murder. One of the reasons God gives for not killing another human being is that the human being bears his image. That's actually his big reason. Don't do that because that's my image you're killing there. Like, it seemed to matter. What was done to an image bearer, God viewed it as being done to him. Like, that's crazy. There's a story Jesus tells in Matthew 25. And it ends this way. The king will say, I tell you the truth. When you did it to the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me. What you do to an image bearer, God sees it the same as doing it to him. Like, that's crazy. So our attitude, think about that. When God marches down and talks to Aaron and Miriam, like there was something big happening there. And I kind of want to feel, I want to let myself feel that. Like God cares about our attitude towards image bearers, people who bear his likeness. That's a huge deal. That should give us pause in our attitude about others. They're an image bearer. I don't care how different they are, what different beliefs they have, how much they irritate you. That is an image bearer of the creator of the universe. You be careful with that. We also believe that the human soul will last forever. Like, that's a crazy thing to think about. We tend to think about things that last a long time as being very important, right? Well, I'm going to give you 2 weeks in a row of C.S. Lewis quotes to make up for my slacking off lately. Here's what he says. There are no ordinary people. You've never talked to a mere mortal. You've never talked to a mere mortal. Think about that. You've never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, and civilizations, those are mortal. This country's mortal, the Mona Lisa's mortal, the pyramids are mortal, the tallest building in New York is mortal. It will not last forever. And their life, all those things, nations and buildings and monuments, the life of those things compared to a human being's is that of a gnat. It is immortals who we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit. The person who cuts you off on the highway, their soul is going to last forever. Forever. That's wild to think about. Not only that, but Jesus came to earth and died for them. So their value is multiplied times over. They are eternal. Their soul will last forever. And the King of the universe, whose image they bear, came and died for them. This is heaping on value on value on value. Jesus shed his blood for them. Whew. This sin we have so foolishly committed. Worship team, why don't you guys come up here? Here's what I imagine. Man, like God's been doing this lately, like making me write sermons that make me feel guilty, just so you know. Like, I'm like, all right, Lord, Adam's going to preach on being critical and negative. Are you sure you're qualified for that? Yes, I'm really qualified, actually. I'm an expert. But he's hitting me with this. So I imagine what God's going to do and like change, but like I asked him to like change my view of people. I gotta get this down. I gotta change the way I think about this. But then I go past that. I don't just imagine it changing my life. I imagine what it would look like if a whole church would start to get a hold of this. Like what it would look like if we actually created a place where we properly valued people, where we actually saw that and treated them in such a way. Can you imagine what that would do? Like that would be magnetic, because let's be honest, the church ain't doing great right now when it comes to public relations. Not a lot of people are like, yay, church. No, but if they ran into a church of people who fiercely loved at this level, man, look out. That would be awesome. I want to be a part of that. Pray with me. Jesus, we need you. Lord, it's too easy to slip into the wrong view of people. Lord, I pray that you would anchor us here, that we would see the depth and the value of every human we interact with, that we would choose love, we would follow in your footsteps, we would love even the hard ones, Lord. And I pray that this place, Lord, this church, this people could be a beacon for that, Lord, that we would swim upstream, that we wouldn't just love those who love us back. We wouldn't just love the people similar to us. We would love everybody. A surprising love, a fierce love. Because you love us. Lord, we need you. We can't do it. Lord, I'm just going to be the first to volunteer. I can't do it. Lord, I need your love. I don't have enough. Wherever my stores are, there's not enough. I need your love to flow into me and flow through me. I pray that we would all be open to that, Lord. Supernaturally, allow your love to flow through us, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.